between one or another elite another 4 years later. So really, polyarchy is a system of elite rule, and a system of elite rule which is a little more soft-core than the type of elite rule that we would see under a military dictatorship, for instance. But what we see is that under a polyarchy, the basic socioeconomic system does not change. It does not become democratized. Wealth is not distributed downward. You don't see a more equitable redistribution of wealth and resources. So that's the key. Socioeconomic dictatorship and free elections. That's the prescription for polyarchy. Participatory democracy would see not only more participation of people in the running of their daily affairs, but it would see a democratization of the economy, a democratization of social relations.
In the 20th century, you can't really talk openly about rule by the rich. That doesn't sound nice. The devices that have been developed, propaganda devices, are ruled by the more competent, the technocratic elite, the responsible people, the educated sectors. There's a huge literature on this, but maybe the primary source for the 20th century is the leading public intellectual of the 20th century in the United States, Walter Lippmann, highly respected commentator on public affairs, also a theorist of democracy.
During World War I, people who later emerged as sort of the founding fathers of modern communication research, modern communication applications, mass media applications. Quite a number of them had worked as propagandists during World War I, often as relatively young people who were shaping their own ideas at the time. And one of them was Walter Lippmann, and Lippmann has emerged really to this day as a leading intellectual light of a particular way of looking at society.
Today, Walter Lippmann is known as the Dean of American Journalism. Yet during the Great War, he had been chief leaflet writer and editor of a U.S. propaganda unit. He also served as secretary of the Inquiry, a quasi-intelligence agency. Before dealing with Lippmann's contributions to political theory, we first have to understand the forms of democracy that have characterized the United States and other Western nations since the age of the Great Revolutions. A leap forward from the age of monarchy, the new nation-states would nevertheless preserve the concept that wealthy elites had the right to rule over the mass of the population.
Well, it's done me a sight of good coming forward in time like this, to see how wonderful things have turned out. But I wish I could take you back with me. Back in time. Back those 200 years when we were starting as a nation. I wish you could have seen this country then.
George Washington was a slave owner. James Madison was a slave owner. Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner. Importantly, Jefferson, who was the most democratic of the lot, was at the Philadelphia Convention. He was ambassador to France, and he picked up a lot of radical ideas from the French Revolution, which didn't exactly endear him to people like Alexander Hamilton. The initial divide in American politics then goes back to those roots. It's Jeffersonian Democrats against Federalists, the leader of whom, until he was killed by Burr, was Alexander Hamilton. Essentially a class struggle, a class. Jefferson was, in fact, a fairly radical democratic thinker in his time. And clearly the Declaration's statement that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, was a powerful democratic statement. And although Jefferson would not have applied it to women or to Indians or to blacks. Nonetheless, in all of those cases, those words would come back to be very serviceable for those groups in pushing civil rights and civil liberties forward in the United States from where Jefferson's statement left them. The problem with the Declaration of Independence was that once independence was won from Britain, then the question became one of governance. How were these former colonies of Britain to govern? What led immediately to the Constitutional Convention in 1787 were a series of uprisings by debtors, essentially, not just in Massachusetts. The most famous is, of course, the Shays Rebellion in 1787.
The American state was founded largely to get the Ohio Valley, largely to cross the Appalachians. That is the Constitution, to organize an army and money in order to conquer further lands more to the west. That's the origin of the USA. But to do that, the slave masters are not going to do the fighting. What they will do is hire poor people to do it. When they don't pay the poor people, as they didn't pay Daniel Shays takes matters into his own hands in 1787 and goes to the courts and shuts down the courts because the courts were beginning to foreclose on the grounds that Daniel Shays and the other veterans from the American War of Independence did not have the money to pay back.
Debtor riots were happening throughout the 1780s. And they were sufficiently scary from the point of view of people with property that they had to do something about it. And what they did about it was essentially overthrow the Articles of Confederation and instill a much stronger, much more able government to protect the property interests that were in dire threat. from the people, quote unquote. This was an elitist, you could almost say coup d'etat, except there wasn't any strong central government to launch a coup against. They were really trying to set one up and protect it against a majoritarian interest, especially economic interests, especially property interests, especially threats from people who didn't have much. First thing they did when they got to Philadelphia,
some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Stop.